Hello and welcome to my developer commentary video for my Rocket Racing level using Unreal Engine for Fortnite. I'm going to start this off by talking about my goals for this level. My goal for this level was to have the wall jump as the core mechanic and then focus on the interactions between wall jumping and the other mechanics to create a well-balanced level that rewarded players for using the wall jump by providing them with an advantage over the other players. I designed my level so that players who successfully used the wall jumps would complete a lap faster than players who didn't use the wall jumps. To achieve this, I ensured that every wall jumping section was either a shortcut or an alternative route through an area. The effect of this is that it incentivizes players to experiment. More importantly though, the overall effect of this is that my map rewards players for learning. For example, a player doing their first lap will most likely only use one of the shortcuts due to the speed of travel and how little time they have to react. However, on the second and third lap, the players will use more and more shortcuts due to learning the layout of the map. This is a common phenomenon found in racing games and is especially true in my map, as I've found through feedback received from playtesters. An example of this can be seen in the footage on screen. This player is on their first lap and does not have enough time to react and use the shortcut for this section, which can actually be seen coming up on the left side of the screen. However, they will make a mental note of the shortcut and then remember it for the next lap so that they can use it on the next lap and maybe even the third lap. As we can see here, players will be travelling very fast through this section whilst performing turns at the same time. Because of this, I've opted to actually use a tunnel for this section, just to protect players from flying off the edges of the map, as well as to give them a safe environment to learn that there's going to be some pretty hard corners coming up in this race. Here we can see the player using the wall jumping sections I created as a faster alternative to get around the hazards, especially with the use of the booster pads on the wall jumps. This tunnel is one of the few sections of the map shared between all players. It was created in this way to safely control player speed by having them slow down on entry to the tunnel and then speed up on the exit. This happens whilst the angle of entry onto the next turn is corrected by the use of the tunnel. This gives players a much smoother experience and keeps map flow smooth. I think this works very well because even though players are reaching a blind corner, they're able to take the corner without actively slowing down too much, and that keeps in line with Epic's game design goal for when they created Rocket Racing, which is to have a high speed and fast paced arcade racing game. Here we can see the player using the last wall jumping shortcut in the track, meaning that on their first lap they actually used 2 of the 4 available shortcuts. This area was designed to be memorable for players by having them both drive on the same track but on opposite sides depending on if they took the shortcut. Using the friends test, I found that I was successful in creating a memorable feature of the map, where the map as a whole was described as, and I quote, "the wall jumpy one with the crazy inverse ramp where you drive on both sides of the road." Here we have the last stretch or final straight of the track, where players must avoid the hazards by strategically jumping over them or by weaving through them. Players who try to fly over the whole area will most likely lose their position in the race due to flying being slower than driving in Rocket Racing. This ensures a good final obstacle that players use to catch up or even lose their position depending on how they traverse the final straight. As I previously mentioned, players will learn the track lap by lap, and we can see that here with the player now using the first available shortcut, rather than using the tunnel. The player is doing this even though they are travelling much faster in this area than they were in the first lap. However, players making the mental note that I mentioned earlier are able to anticipate the shortcut and take it with relative ease. Another effect of players making this mental note on the first lap, regardless of if they miss the shortcut, is that it acts as a form of tutorialization and sets players up to expect shortcuts or alternative routes throughout the track. Here we see that the player is now using the normal route through this section of the track and not the wall jumping alternative seen in the first lap. This section of the route was created so that players who did not use the wall jumping would have to fly over the hazards. As previously mentioned, flying is slower than driving in Rocket Racing, so players that do this will be at a disadvantage. However, this area is also a form of tutorialization, and players who are flying will actually learn from the players wall jumping through this section that driving is faster than flying. Teaching players that the faster route will be to wall jump. This message is actually reinforced by the use of booster pads in the wall jumping areas. Such as here, where the alternative route is players wall jumping onto these floating islands, driving along them and then collecting the booster pads. Making this decision should feel fairly natural to players due to the previous tutorialization, teaching players that flying will be the slower route. Here we can see the player travelling the normal route instead of using the final wall jumping shortcut. This area was very fun to create, especially with the objective being a memorable feature of the track. Because of this, players on the normal route are given plenty of booster pads and a hairpin turn so that they can collect some boost through drifting. This ensures that they are travelling at a high speed through the area and shouldn't be at too big a disadvantage compared to the players using the wall jump alternative. The reasoning for this was so that players are launched off of the ramp at a similar if not the same time, resulting in an intense, jaw-dropping moment for players when they realise they've been driving on opposite sides of the same road and now may even crash in mid-air. This tunnel connecting the final two sections of the track was designed to create a safe way to rapidly drop elevation down to a similar one as the starting and finishing line. Twisting and angling the tunnel in the way I have creates a final blind corner leading into the final straight. However, by incorporating the final blind corner into the tunnel, it actually remains intense whilst being relatively safe for players, due to the tunnel preventing them from flying off of the track or crashing. By making this corner safe, players have no need to slow down and can travel full speed out of the tunnel. This gives players who learned from earlier laps another advantage by being able to anticipate this corner. World building can be seen throughout the track in the form of meshes placed and through landscape editing. My aim was to create a visually appealing world to complement my racetrack whilst keeping a theme of official rocket racing tracks. As you can see, I've been successful in this goal and created a holiday island which has been repurposed for a racing festival through the addition of blimps, balloons, viewing stands and a festival area. All of this is complemented with water towers and windmills for power. In terms of visual affordance, I have used racing chevron signs to indicate turns coming up as well as the type of turn as a form of visual aid so players can adjust their driving accordingly. I believe that I have achieved my design goal of creating a level that is well balanced whilst maintaining a focus on the core mechanic of wall jumping. I have provided players with multiple opportunities to use wall jumping to their advantage. I've achieved this in multiple ways, as players can use the wall jump to gain speed boost, use shortcuts and even avoid hazards. The time difference between a player who engages with all the wall jumps and a player who does not is 8 seconds. To showcase this, I have created a small demonstration which we'll play now. As can be seen in my demonstration, there is an 8-second difference between the two players, making it clear that players who are actively engaging with wall jumping are rewarded with a sufficient advantage over the players who do not engage with it at all. That covers everything that I want to talk about in this video. Thank you for watching.